The Pentagon has ordered a military-wide stand-down to root out extremism within its ranks after the January 6th assault on the Capitol. Over the next 60 days, regular activity will be paused on a staggered basis to tackle issues of potential domestic terrorism, while at the same time avoiding disrupting military operations. So we want to bring in CBS News senior investigative correspondent Catherine Herridge. She's been monitoring this situation and has the latest from the Pentagon. You are joining us on the phone, Catherine. So this is interesting because certainly concerns about extremism within the military, that's kind of been going on for decades, but it definitely seemed to have bubbled over with the assault on the Capitol. So tell me, is that what kind of led to this order? And also, what does this actually look like? What's going to be taking place?
Well, Anne-Marie, good morning. The Pentagon spokesman says January 6th was the wake-up call because of the number of people connected to the military who were part of the attack. And according to a review of military service records and court documents by CBS News, at least 16 of those arrested are veterans and 2 others are in the Army Reserve. Now, during the stand down, the Pentagon spokesman said that there are essentially 2 goals. He said leadership will communicate directly with their men and women about the department's behavior expectations and extremist ideology. The leadership will also be listening to gain further insight from service members about the scope of the problem, Anne-Marie.
Okay, so they're going to be talking to service members. And then I guess I'm wondering, what happens outside of that? I mean, part of what you have to do is create an environment where rank and file service members feel comfortable saying, this is what I've seen, this is what I've heard. I imagine if I was asked directly by my superior if I was involved in extremist activities, I would say no. So is this sort of a fact-finding endeavor? Is this about, rooting out individuals and pulling them out of the military? Do we have a sort of better sense of what they hope the outcome will be?
Well, during the briefing with the Pentagon spokesman yesterday, he promised reporters that they would have more details forthcoming about how all of this was going to roll out. And to your point, how they were going to take what they learned on what amounts to a listening tour and affecting real change within the military. So at this point, it is in part a fact-gathering exercise to try and understand the scope of this, how deep it is. The numbers on the Capitol are significant numbers, but they're not huge numbers. As I mentioned earlier, it's 16 veterans and 2 members of the Army Reserve. But they want to see how broad, widespread it is, and then they also want to be clear with the men and women who serve what the department's expectations are in terms of their behavior and in terms of their view on extremist ideology. Because January 6th was really a wake-up call, not just at the Pentagon, but really for the country in the sense that people who may have thought about these ideologies before, what law enforcement would call aspirational, cross that threshold to violent action. And that has been a red line that for many had not been crossed before.
Now, we are talking about extremism and just how much of it may or may not be in the military. But the Navy recently did a report assessing discrimination. 2 different topics, but certainly can overlap in a number of significant ways. Discrimination in its ranks. What was the outcome of that investigation?
Well, the Navy released nearly 60 recommendations to address sexism, racism, and a lack of diversity in its senior ranks, as well as how bias or favoritism impact promotion. And by one example, the report found 77% of Navy officers are white, which is in line with U.S. Census data, but Black and Hispanic officers are still underrepresented. So it really lays out in black and white the findings within the Navy, which of all the services is quite diverse, but it's a recognition that they really want to do better in these key areas, Anne-Marie.
Hey, this is a conversation that needs to continue, and it is, I think, good news that the military is taking a good hard look at this. Catherine, thank you very much.
Of course, you're welcome.